I'm going to begin a little bit out of order from the way I normally do this, and I do want to speak initially about the victims in this case. I will tell you, we just spent the last 20 minutes or so with them after the plea in this case. They're exhausted. They're exhausted and they are spent. There was great emotion by all the victims' families, just shared with us in the office. And I was asked by two different families to make a comment and on their behalf because they didn't think they were able to do it. Not today, anyway. On behalf of Norma Winfeld, she is Mike Winfeld's wife. She is honored that her husband, Mike, died a hero. She wanted me to comment that she was honored that he was able to, because based on his actions, save another life, because that's what she believes Mike did. That's what we believe Mike did. She asked for one thing from the community, and that was for prayers for her family and for her children, because Mike was the superhero to his children, and they now will live without their superhero, and she asked for the community's prayers and support for her children. Claudia Molina's daughter, Melissa, also asked me to make a comment, and some of the facts that came out in the proffer, by the way, the family didn't know all of the facts before today. When she learned that her mother fought Mr. Tordil, she was proud of her mother. She was proud that her mother fought for her life, and she wanted to say that. She was proud of her mother because she thought the fact that her mother fought and wrestled his glasses and scratched him may have saved another life. So she wanted me to acknowledge her mother and to acknowledge the fact that, again, as her surviving daughter, she is proud of her mom and what she did to potentially save another victim in this case. I will tell you, if you listen to what we said upstairs, it was extraordinary work by the Montgomery County Police in this case. You now know the full depths of the information known to them when the manhunt for Mr. Tordil was underway. This was a man who knew there would be innocent lives lost, and even wrote in his musings he was apologizing to his potential victims before they were their victims. He was talking about taking his wife's life and writing to his daughter saying it did not have to end this way, but he knew it was going to end this way. This was a man who wanted to go out in a hail of gunfire at the hands of the Montgomery County Police. He wanted a suicide by cop. But the fact that the men and women of this department, I think Tom Manger, all of the detectives from homicide, the detectives that were the fugitive squad that took him into custody, this is great police work. So many times people talk about the use of force by police agencies around this country. You ought to think back to this episode. You know the information was known to this police department. Look at the restraint that was used to make sure this man was taken into custody without any additional injury to persons, and he was taken alive, is an example of exemplary police work, and we should be proud of our police department for what they did. The sentencing in this case is going to take place on July the 7th at 1:30 in the afternoon. At that time, we anticipate, which is typical here, you will hear from a long list of family members and friends of the deceased and the injured who survived their gunshot wounds they were inflicted with as a result of Mr. Tordil's actions. We think that sentencing hearing will be several hours long, but at the end of the day, we will be seeking the maximum sentences that are possible under the law. As you know, the maximum sentence allowable under Maryland law is life without the possibility of parole. That is the appropriate sentence in this case. When you engage in a course of conduct where you willfully and premeditatedly, without callous disregard for, you knew there were going to be innocent victims. He knew it and he apologized to them in advance, but he was willing to continue to do that. Look, he was fueled, as you know, by his own anger about his own failed marriage, his failed finances, the fact that his job had been taken away from him. He was under the threat of a protective order. This was a man who did not care what injury he caused to his wife or to anyone else who got in the way. The people here in Montgomery County that were killed or were shot were truly, they were innocents. These were people who had no connection to this man whatsoever. It was complete random violence because he needed access to a car to complete his escape from law enforcement. Look, he'd gotten his money, he'd gotten his pills, he'd gotten his personal effects together so that after he committed these murders, he'd flee, but he needed a vehicle to make his escape, and these crimes occurred because these people had the audacity to fight him and try to prevent him from stealing their vehicles, and he was willing to take their lives to make sure he had the car that would allow him to escape and run away. He faces life without the possibility of parole and 3 consecutive life sentences in addition to that, which are possible. I will tell you, joined by Patrick Mays and Doug Wink, who are part of the trial team here, I'm very proud of the work that my office has done. I'm very proud of the lawyers that stand with me here, and we will be asking for the maximum sentence to be imposed by law. It's the only appropriate sentence. It's the only appropriate sentence. You cannot do what this man did and not think you deserve to be behind bars for the rest of your days on earth. He's 63 years old. He was a federal law enforcement officer, certainly not the kind of background you would expect, but his background also allowed him to premeditate some of the things he was going to do to avoid being apprehended by the police. This was a man who rented a car 5 hours before the murder so that when he tracked his wife to the location where she was coming to pick up their daughter, she would not know she was being followed. This was a man who knew that the police had the capability of tracking him if he kept his cell phone on, so he turned it off. This was a man who knew at some point in time the police were looking for him, and at that point in time knew that he had a rental vehicle, so he had to get away from the rental vehicle, and he needed a new vehicle, and he came here. This was a tragedy for many of us. I've said this to some of you because some of you were in the parking lot there in Aspen Hill back in 2002 when the sniper shootings occurred in this county. I stood in that same parking lot. We were in the same. He ate in the same restaurant that John Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo went in after they committed their murders in Aspen Hill. They went to the same Boston market. We were in that same parking lot. He went into the same Michael's store and made a purchase of a hat the day of this killing. That was the first place that was shot at by Lee Boyd Malvo and John Muhammad the night before when the sniper shootings took full flower here in Montgomery County. It was kind of eerie for many of us to be back in that parking lot as this transpired because, my God, we'd had 3 people killed, 3 others injured, potentially going to die from their injuries, and yet we're back in the same spot with the same command bus in the same parking lot. The irony was not lost on me. And I know this was a terrifying event for the people of Prince George's County, terrifying event for the people of Montgomery County. But again, thanks to this extraordinary work of the Montgomery County Police, it came to a peaceful resolution. This man has been arrested. He has now been convicted of these crimes, and he will be sentenced on July the 7th.
Mr. State's Attorney, why did you need to make this big presentation? Was it to show that it was premeditated? Was it to show that he doesn't seem to have any remorse?
Yeah, I think that all of the crime, I think it's a great question. I think everything's connected. Look, the fact that the murders occurred here, you could not present an honest picture of what happened in the killings and the shootings that occurred in Montgomery County if you didn't go back to what happened in Prince George's County before. You didn't understand what fueled and precipitated the first killing if you didn't look at the protective orders, the fact that he was fired, the fact that his weapons were taken away from him, the fact that he was drowning in debt. All of this stuff played a huge part in our presentation. Also went to the premeditation. This is a man who, in his own writings, knew that there would be innocent victims and was willing to take those unknown human lives when the opportunity came about. And that's what he did.
Okay. Anyone else? I know you're tight on deadline.
Can you explain why Mr. Tordil accepted this plea and raised it out?
I think why Mr. Tordil actually pled guilty, I think that's a question that's better left to Mr. Tordil or to his attorneys. As you know, the first murder in this case did occur in front of one of his own children. So I don't know, but did he spare a child having to testify in the case? I don't know. You have to ask him and his lawyers.